You are listening to The Andy Caldwell Show. Andy is a government watchdog and business advocate who's been serving the Central Coast for over 25 years.
I'd like to welcome you back to the show. It's always our pleasure to have one of the Black conservative leaders in America associated with Project 21 with us. Project 21's been around for over 25 years. It's sponsored by the National Center for Public Policy Research, and its leaders have been quoted, interviewed, or published over 50,000 times since the program began, and we have them on every chance we get. Today, it's our pleasure to have with us Sonia Morris. She has worked in the fields of learning, litigation, and finance. She's been a business lecturer at a Chinese university. She's got a law degree and a master's degree, respectively, from Regent University, and a bachelor's from the State University of New York at Binghamton. And she's currently working on a doctorate in law and policy at Liberty University. She's also the author of 4 books. Sonia, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Andy, for having me on. Appreciate it.
It's our pleasure. It's Martin Luther King Day. I am a huge admirer of him. I believe that he's one of the greatest men in the history of America. I feel like he finished off what Abraham Lincoln started in terms of reestablishing true equality in America and getting rid of what was still the vestiges of institutional racism throughout our country, but especially in the South. Tell us your thoughts about him and how his dream is now being undermined by big government.
Andy, thank you so much. Yes, as I think on Dr. Martin Luther King, I really think that his dream, we have progressed as a people so far down the line in that dream, in realizing that dream, that we are attempting to regress and go backwards to where we were divided along racial lines. And, we hear all this talk about trans this and trans that. I do believe that Dr. Martin Luther King was transracial. What he carried and what he embodied was beyond a black man. I believe equality and justice and freedom and unity are all things that we all want to see and have. I mean, that's our ideal, right? And he just happened to be wrapped in the package of a black man. But I do believe that his counterpart, wrapped in, I would say, a white package, was the likes of William Wilberforce, who was instrumental in the abolition of slavery in the UK. So Dr. King's dream, I mean, I believe that we achieved to the point of having a black president. So his dream is realizable, and right now, big government being pushed. Racialization is once again being pushed by those who were once our oppressors, and we as a people seem to be buying it hook, line, and sinker, and that ought not to be. He would be appalled today.
Well, and you bring up something that's very important. Folks, William Wilberforce, his name should be as famous as Martin Luther King's and Abraham Lincoln's. Because what he did, the United Kingdom, Great Britain, was the leading empire in the world. And one of the facets of that empire was the slave trade. So not only did they have slavery within the British Empire, but their great naval type enterprises and commerce was trading slaves. They were shipping them all over the world. So Wilberforce spent nearly his entire life, first of all, to end the British slave trade, but then to end slavery in the British Empire, which set us up for ending slavery here. And he should be remembered, like I said, in the same vein as Martin Luther King and Abraham Lincoln.
Absolutely.
And the other thing is both Martin Luther King and William Wilberforce and Abraham Lincoln were all men of faith. So they were not just doing this as social, political agitators, but they were led by their faith, because the same people that want to cancel Martin Luther King want to cancel his faith.
Right. Exactly. Yes, absolutely. And that's one of the points I was bringing up on another interview, that he was for one America. He loved the American dream. He loved this nation. And we're seeing people wanting to drag this nation down. And I believe if he were alive today, he would be telling us to stop, halt, because we're on this journey of sliding into, obliterating all the freedoms and that the framers fought for. They themselves laid their lives down and their fortunes and all of this, so that we can have this American that is in grave danger today. So I believe if MLK, and MLK was also referred to as the nation, the moral leader of the nation, not the moral leader of African Americans, but the moral leader of the nation. And I would ask the question, who is that today? Who is that today who is willing to be a target and get out there, fight for what we see is about to be lost in this nation? And so that is why, I want to do my part. Sometimes you're going to be a target, but it doesn't matter. At the end of the day, it's what the calling of God on the life transcends and goes beyond what is, what would be good for us. For instance, we want to have these private lives and all of that, but sometimes we really have to be willing to risk it all and fight for what is worth fighting for, and that's freedom, equality, justice, and unity.
Well, absolutely, and I'll tell you, I hate to say it, but the Black community, and especially in inner cities, needs Martin Luther King yesterday, like there's no tomorrow.
Yeah.
And I always ask this question about, especially when I have Black pastors on, is, there's mega churches in these inner cities, or at least on the border of these inner cities in major towns across the land. And I always ask, why can't they have more of an impact? And it is a profound mystery to me about how Martin Luther King was able to have the impact he did that lasts until today, but these other pastors are not rising to national prominence.
Right. Well, he had a passion for God, a passion for his people, and a passion for this nation, and he was not purchasable. I'm sure he might have been offered money to just be quiet and go and live quietly in the countryside, but at the end of the day, it was about more than him. It was about the movement, which was for all America, and really not just even America, the world, right? Because we are this beacon of hope. That's why people are trying to flood into this country illegally, legally, and all these other things that are happening. But the problem with much of the pastors in the inner city and African American churches is that people are not, people want money, they want influence. They're not necessarily people of conviction, and that's the problem. And Martin Luther King was a man of conviction, and men of conviction, they transcend their races. They transcend even their times. And so that's why he was willing to die. And I'm sure, I didn't know the man, but I'm sure he knew that he was setting himself up as a target and could be possibly martyred, and that's exactly what happened. So we don't have many of those people today, Andy. We really don't, but we need them.
Absolutely, just like South Africa had Nelson Mandela. We're going to be back with more of Sonia Morris. You're listening to the Andy Caldwell Show. Stay tuned.
Business each and every day. It's the Andy Caldwell Show, brought to you by Cola.
I'd like to welcome you back to the show. Our guest, Sonia Morris. She's got a law degree, a master's degree, and working on her doctorate. She's the author of 4 books. She's a business leader and a business lecturer. And we're glad to have her with us. She's part of Project 21, which is an absolutely phenomenal organization of Black conservative Americans that love our country. And they're out there speaking into the media literally tens of thousands of times since its inception. Sonia and I are talking about a piece that Project 21 set out about Martin Luther King. And one of the things I wanted to bring up is that how the left, we've done shows on how the left have even subject Martin Luther King to cancellation. Could you talk to us about that? What you think about that?
Because what he was for and what he taught and what he died for goes against the current narrative, which is, that America is great. We love America. He was for not disobeying the laws. He was not for these violent outbursts. Apparently, they call them peaceful demonstrations, which they were actually riots. He was anti-violence. So his narrative went against what they are pushing right now. And, of course, what his goal is to get equality for our people, for African Americans, and so that we can be one America. But now this desire to divide us along racial lines is really so that we can be divided and conquered. And we know that goes all the way back to biblical times when it was a divide and conquer, where the enemy of everyone really was trying to get us against God. So basically what they're trying to do now is really destroying America, because if you divide us, we're destroyed. And we have to remember a united Union Army of the North was able to overcome and beat the divided Southern Confederate Army, because they were divided along color lines. And so and again, even the term racist is racist, because we are actually one human race. We're not Black America. We're not white America. We are America. We're the United States of America. So what Martin Luther King stood for was to unite us all, unite us as a people, not divide us. And so it goes against the current narrative, and which is, again, the ulterior motive is to destroy us as a people.
Well, I'll tell you, one of the things that's remarkable, of course, I was a kid when Martin Luther King and JFK and Bobby Kennedy were all killed. But nonetheless, it still shook our country back then, and as it should have. Mm-hmm. One of the things, so I have gone to Selma. I saw the bridge. I think I saw the church where he pastored, but also there was this little town nearby Marion, Alabama, where his wife was raised. And what I didn't know until I visited that town was that there was a Black kid that got murdered there, and that was one of the reasons he had one of the marches. It's a little town about 20 miles away. And I never, watching those videos, and folks, to celebrate Martin Luther King, watch the video in Selma. Watch the fire hoses, the dogs, the police batons, while they did nothing but take the beating. And that, to me, it's harder for me to imagine to do nothing in a fight than to take a beating in a fight. Right. In other words, the Gandhi, Mandela, Martin Luther King, they won their battles via peace.
Yes.
Even though there was terrible injustice happening in all three of those countries, they did it peacefully at great physical expense. And I don't know, there's no way I'd be brave enough to do that.
Right. Yes. Absolutely. And right now, though, back then when Martin Luther King and the freedom marches and civil rights, we needed to have equality, and we needed our country to be one. America didn't really have enemies to be able to do anything, to us. We were strong. But now it's even more dangerous for us to divide, because we are surrounded. We have all these enemies, and enemies with power, and enemies who really want to destroy us. And so the division is even more dangerous now than it was in MLK's time. The division now could literally subject our nation to being obliterated. And so that's why we have Project 21 and others are just speaking of unity and patently rejecting every attempt to divide us along racial lines and to divide us. So, there's one word that comes to mind, and for some reason it's been in my mind the past couple of days, and it's verklempt. And I was like, what is that word? What does it mean? And it's a word that you can overcome with emotion, and you can become depressed. And I feel like the word racist and racism does this to people. And for instance, we will call people racist for ridiculous reasons. For instance, if you are against illegal immigration, you're racist. If you're for this, you're racist. And of course, all of that is nonsense. So people know how to get under the skin of a black person, and leaders use that to their own advantage to get us to be against something or for something. So it's really used manipulatively, and it's disgusting.
Well, the other thing is they now talk about assimilation in a negative way, in a negative word, and yet we were in a nation of immigrants going back to day one. And the assimilation wasn't into some quote unquote white supremacist culture or construct. Living here in California, we're a melting pot. We didn't have slavery here. We're a melting pot, and that's the way we should be. And I feel like they're trying to deconstruct that, and it all started with multiculturalism that morphed into cultural appropriation.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, I myself am an immigrant. My parents came here in 1978. My dad brought us here because this is a land of opportunity and promise, and we came here the legal way. And my parents would also be a little amazed at how far we've come down the line, that we're trying to go back to racism. But, racial lines. But yes, to your point, absolutely. It's okay for us to celebrate our differences and have our differences, but we also need to realize that we are here together, and we need to be able to operate in peace together. And that's what's in danger right now.
Well, it absolutely is. And, and again, out here in California, they're talking about reparations. They're doing in other states as well. And my mom was an immigrant, and my dad was actually a slave in World War II in a Japanese prisoner war camp, and I never got reparations. The
Germans did it for some of the Jews, though. But I mean, it won't work here. How do you even do that?
Pardon?
I said it won't work here. How do you make the people who are living today pay for the sins of their foreparents?
You can't do it.
It's just not possible.
And especially in California, if somebody was born and raised here, their ancestors weren't slaves. And if somebody was born and raised here, their ancestors never owned slaves. So you're having people that never owned slaves pay reparations to somebody whose family never were slaves.
That's exactly it. And if I lived in California and I was subject for reparations, I wasn't born here. My parents weren't born here, so I would get it. It's unjust, because who would be paying for that? The taxpayers.
And again, all what this does, folks, is they're just stoking animus.
Yeah.
Is what they do. Divide and conquer. The whole scheme of the Democratic Party is divide and conquer, and then the global elites is to eradicate and erase Western civilization, Judeo-Christian heritage, and our Constitution, so that we'll be easier to conquer. We'll have to conquer. We'll surrender.
Yeah. Well, to go back to the term of white supremacy, my point, it's a non-issue and it's a non-thing. Because the only reason I would have an issue with white supremacy is if I really did believe that someone white was supreme above me. And of course, that is not the case. It's just a word that's thrown around, and it's, again, used to divide and conquer. And people are falling victim to all of these tactics. They're demonic tactics, really. I mean, to bring derision and to bring all of the violence and, all of the illegal things that are going on in the nation, illegal immigration, and just the government just so many times turning a blind eye to that which is wrong and targeting people who are trying to do the right thing. So,
Well,
we're totally turned around right now. We need to halt it. We need to stop it, and we need to save America.
well, thank God for the work you're doing, Project 21. I can imagine you going into a Chinese university as a business lecturer and say, showing up on time and working hard, those are white supremacist constructs. Don't do that in China. Hey, we're out of time. Anytime you want to come back, please do, Sonia.
Well, thank you so much, Andy. I appreciate you so much, and thank you for the work you're doing. Just keep it up. Keep fighting.
All righty. You take care. Thank you.